Last week we looked at chapter 17 and the one world religion, Mystery Babylon. Today we're going to look at that little bridge between 17 and how it fits right into chapter 18 as we look into the one world government.
Well, as Penny said, last week we discussed Revelation chapter 17, and we talked a little bit about the one world religious system that's going to happen. And today we're going to bridge that into this one world political or government system. And it's two separate pieces, and yet they are far more interconnected than I ever realized. And so we're just going to really dive in. We initially actually recorded both 17 and 18 several months ago because we were kind of going through Revelation. And we've continued to study, and we have learned so much more that we're re-recording parts of it because there's too much to tell you that we didn't even know back then.
Well, there was a lot of it that I did know. We just didn't include it, and I wanted to. I wanted to go into that whole branch, and I don't know. Just the day that we recorded it, it didn't come out. So, and you know what? You're going to have to watch. So this is really interesting. I got to say this because it's kind of funny. So when we did chapter 18, we also did a whole bunch of TikToks. And then for some reason they got lost. I mean, the files got lost. And I couldn't bring them up. Couldn't bring up anything. Couldn't bring up 18. Couldn't bring up the TikToks. Nothing. And then I finally got 18, but the TikToks still weren't there. And now, when I went back to look at it, literally there's all the TikToks. But here's the thing, you're going to have to go watch our TikTok channel because, my hair is smoking hot at that time. And you're not even going to get to see it because we're re-recording and, yeah, it's different.
So aside from, the amazing content and the fact some of it's really funny and some of it's really good.
It was Christmas, it was like January.
But our hair.
The important
thing. That's right.
It looked really cool. So what we wanted to do was kind of go back and re-look a little bit at 17. The one thing there was a few things that we did not get to mention that I wanted to. It's a mystery, Babylon the Great. People think that that's the name, Mystery Babylon. It's not. It's saying that Babylon is the mystery. And why is it the mystery? Because it was, it is, and it will be again. So what we were going to mention was, a lot of people say it's Mystery Babylon, and that's not correct. Babylon is a mystery, this new Babylon, which we'll get into a little bit later what I argue that I think Babylon might be.
Right.
Besides just Babylon, but the spirit behind that.
Well, there's just so much. So this harlot, this Babylon, it represents and brings this one world religion, and it talks about it in 17 coming on the beast, riding in on the beast. And there's a lot of speculation about what that one world religion will be, but then also this one world government and where it will reside. And like we said, it's so much more interconnected than separating the two is really not that easy to do. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that the other part that I really wanted to make sure that we hit on, because I don't think it was as clear even to me when we were talking about it last time, as I again continued to study just that. So there's going to be this world religion that will come up, but the Antichrist will eventually squash that because he doesn't want anything else other than worship of himself. He wants to be the center of everything, the head of the government and the political system and the head of the worship and the religious system, because, and we've talked about this, there has to be a worship involved with any sort of government that is controlled by evil, by dark forces. There has to be that side of it. So if he's going to be the head of it as the beast, as Satan, all of that kind of stuff, he has to have both. And so this one world government and one world religion will be kind of merged into one, but it is separate initially. There is a religion.
Because that's that first 3.5 years even when the man who will become the Antichrist comes on the scene. This is the getting everybody behind it. This is the getting everybody, taking like say 100 religions and morphing them into one, so that way after it has become one, and the 3.5 years, his death is his coming back to life, and Satan enters him. It is at that point where, well, then we can no longer have this world religion here because I want to be worshipped.
Mm-hmm.
And so that it'll be that transference, and that's kind of where that false prophet had come in, and he kind of grouped everything into one, and then he's going to merge that from what it was into focusing on the Antichrist. And then it is him who then goes in and creates the image of the beast, and all this is the forerunner to when then he will actually go into the temple and he will proclaim himself as God. And that's when everything shifts, for sure. But it's that collectively getting everything together so that way it's manageable. Now, we've speculated. We don't know what that religion is going to be. You have to realize this is how we know it's after the rapture. Because the Christians are gone. Because the Christians would never, those who are true Christians that have accepted Christ would not go along with that.
Right.
So what other religion, as you think about all of them, so many of them are peaceful. So what religion would be strong enough that would probably overtake, if the Christians are gone, what religion would step up and fill that void?
It would be Islam. And it makes sense, the connection to Judaism and Christianity that Islam has, and yet the break from it that there is.
Well, and it's the violence, it's the fear, you follow us or else. The only or else is Christianity, and if that's gone, you can see how that could potentially be the one, the catalyst that's going to get everybody under that umbrella. And you see that already. I mean, all roads lead to God, and you see even in the political realm, at the prayer breakfast, we're praying to gods that are not our God.
Right.
We're not praying to Yahweh, and things that you would have never thought in a million years you would ever see happen or spoken or done within even our Christian denominations and pulpits and from pastors, and yet it's happening.
It is. And it's a slippery slope. We've talked about that. Just that Jesus makes it pretty clear. He's the way.
Because I am the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to the Father except through him.
And so, but if already that is softening within Christianity, and then we're gone, the door is open for something else to step in, for sure.
Islam has made such a prevalent presence that they are everywhere, all over the world, all over the globe. I mean, just look at how many Muslims we have in America right now that we didn't have 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
And you see in Europe and just Africa, everywhere. It's just spreading so much. It wouldn't be that far of a stretch, because Christianity is the number one religion, but not by very much. I mean, Islam is right underneath it as a number two. So if the number one is taken out, well, then by default, it would make sense.
It really would.
That would slide into place.
One of the perspectives that we're going to share today just talks about how, with that being Islam being the potential for the one world religion, how that also would fit well with them being a part of this one world government, and how those two are interconnected. And so there is a lot of possibility in both of those things.
Well, and I didn't realize how much influence and control and power and manipulation has been going on from the Middle East behind the scenes that we wouldn't even know or recognize. I mean, we've put titles and names to it, but not at the source. So that's been also interesting, and just given the geographical location.
Oh, for sure.
So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and just dive in then to chapter 18, and we are going to start with the scripture.
After this, I saw another angel coming down from heaven. He had great authority, and the earth was illuminated by his splendor. With a mighty voice he shouted, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling for demons and a haunt for every impure spirit, a haunt for every unclean bird, a haunt for every unclean and detestable animal.
For all the nations have drunk the maddening wine of her adulteries, and the kings of the earth committed adultery with her, and the merchants of the earth grew rich from her excessive luxuries.
Then I heard another voice from heaven say, "Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, so that you will not receive any of her plagues. For her sins are piled up to heaven, and God has remembered her crimes."
Give back to her as she has given. Pay her back double for what she has done. Pour her a double portion from her own cup. Give her as much torment and grief as the glory and luxury she gave herself. In her heart she boasts, "I sit enthroned as queen. I am not a widow. I will never mourn."
Therefore, in one day her plagues will overtake her, death, mourning, and famine. She will be consumed by fire, for mighty is the Lord God who judges her.
When the kings of the earth who committed adultery with her and shared her luxury see the smoke of her burning, they will weep and mourn over her, terrified at her torment. They will stand far off and cry, "Woe, woe to you, great city, you mighty city of Babylon! In 1 hour your doom has come."
The merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her because no one buys their cargoes anymore. Cargoes of gold, silver, precious stones and pearls, fine linen, purple, silk and scarlet cloth, every sort of citron wood, and articles of every kind made of ivory, costly wood, bronze, iron, and marble.
Cargoes of cinnamon, spice, of incense, myrrh, and frankincense, of wine and oil, of fine flour and wheat, cattle and sheep, horses and carriages, the human beings sold as slaves. They will say, "The fruit you longed for is gone from you. All your luxury and splendor have vanished, never to be recovered."
The merchants who sold these things and gained their wealth from her will stand far off, terrified at her torment. They will weep and mourn and cry out, "Woe, woe to you, great city, dressed in fine linen, purple and scarlet, and glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls."
In 1 hour, such great wealth has been brought to ruin. Every sea captain and all who travel by ships and sailors and all who earn their living from the sea will stand far off. When they see the smoke of her burning, they will exclaim, "Was there ever a city like this great city?"
They will throw dust on their heads, with weeping and mourning cry out, "Rejoice over her, you heavens! Rejoice, you people of God! Rejoice, apostles and prophets! For God has judged her with the judgment she imposed on you."
Then a mighty angel picked up a boulder the size of a large millstone and threw it into the sea and said, "With such violence the great city of Babylon will be thrown down, never to be found again."
The music of harpists and musicians, pipers and trumpeters will never be heard in you again. No worker of any trade will ever be found in you again. The sound of a millstone will never be heard in you again.
The light of the lamp will never shine in you again. The voice of the bridegroom and the bride will never be heard in you again. Your merchants were the world's important people. By your magic spell, all the nations were led astray.
In her was found the blood of prophets and of God's holy people, of all who have been slaughtered on the earth.
So we see that there was already a lot of judgments being poured out with the scrolls and then the trumpets. And we're getting ready for the bowl judgments. It hasn't happened yet, but this is leading up. So this, look how fast, but then we've seen how fast things go. How fast this one world government that centralizes in one town, in one city, it takes over just that quick. That's pretty massive.
It is.
And they've already just exploded. I mean, exploded with wealth. Exploded. I mean, they have slaves. They have everything. And
it talks about the glory and the luxury and the fine.
You think of Las Vegas almost. You know, the lights, the glamour, the shows. It talks about the harpist. That's kind of what I see. I see Las Vegas, only on a
bigger scale. Yes, a massive, massive center of the world's economy.
I almost see Pinocchio here. Remember what happens to Pinocchio when he goes off to Treasure Island? Well, for those of you who are old like me, you remember that Pinocchio, this is when he becomes the bad boy and he takes off. And it's almost like Peter Pan's Neverland. He takes off to Treasure Island, which was, it was promised great things and wonderful things, and he goes, and then it, you know, it's just like a free-for-all. It's anything you want, it's great, it's wonderful, and that's kind of what you see with Babylon, but yet it has order. It has, but even with Treasure Island, there was people running it that were getting everyone else sucked in. Enjoyment, pleasure. Maybe it was Pleasure Island, not Treasure Island. Fantasy Island. To plane. No. I remember it was Disney anyway. It was never my favorite movie, but long story short, I just kind of see the parallel there with this. So it is going to be a massive city of controlling the whole world, because that, again, we said with the one world religion, they have to centralize it. Well, now, if the rapture's happened and all the Christians are gone, you can just see how in that commotion, in that chaos, in that crisis, what is it they say? Never let a good crisis go to waste. It'll be, governments will be toppled over immediately, and they're going to be crying out for somebody to come in and figure this out and bring it in. I know that a lot of people have argued that Babylon is a revived Roman Empire from 500 years ago. You know, the Reformation changed to some thinking that the Vatican would be the Roman Empire. I believe it's a much bigger group than that, but I would almost argue that the spirit behind this is a revived Egyptian empire. Look at our money. We say America is a Christian nation, and, you know, in God we trust. But if you were somebody from 7,000 years or 5,000 or 2,000 years from now, if America didn't even exist anymore, or maybe you were an alien, and you were to find a dollar bill somewhere, and you knew nothing about the culture, you knew nothing about the country, no history, and you were to pick up that dollar bill, what would you see?
Well, you would see a pyramid. You would see the all-seeing eye.
So knowing all this and looking, there is Latin on those seals. And what does it say?
So it says, Annuit Coptis, which is he has approved our undertakings. Novus Ordo Seclorum,
Which means?
a new order of the ages.
And the third one?
Is e pluribus unum.
All right.
Out of many, one.
So this has been on our money from the very beginning. I mean, this is the architecture of, I know, we talked about this, how things have changed back and forth, what seal was where and what became of importance. And yeah, but to look at it, you would not know that we were a Christian nation. In God we trust. What God?
Right.
Could be any God. Is it Osiris? Because everything else on it's Egyptian. There's a little Greek.
A little Latin.
Latin.
The interesting part about this that I didn't realize until we really started digging in is that this idea of a one world government or this new world order, this is not a new concept. And, you know, this is something that we're talking about that will happen at the end of days. But there are people that have been pushing for it for a very long time.
Oh, and we are talking centuries. The whole point of, I mean, and even when they didn't realize it, as Jim Markel always says, useful idiots. Well, I mean, they weren't looking at the scriptures trying to fulfill the end of days. But even Alexander the Great. Well, okay, so Egypt tried to, but you have to realize at that time, they thought that that little area, that little corner of the world was the world.
Right.
And so even Alexander the Great, you know, he thought he had almost conquered the world, and that's why he died of depression, because there wasn't any more world to conquer, and all he had was this little area of Europe. So then we bring it up closer and closer to time. Of course, as we get closer to now, people knew that the whole world was round, and there's way more to it than just Europe and the Middle East. So this one world concept, man has been trying to make this happen ever since Babylon, the original Babylon and Nimrod.
Yeah, because Babylon, it was not Babylon originally, it was Babel or Babel. And that's when they were trying to build this big, well, tower. We call it the Tower of Babel, but it wasn't really a tower as we traditionally see
like
it.
a ziggurat.
Right. So imagine a huge pyramid with a flat top, so that you could put an altar up there and you could go up, and they did all kinds of great things.
Mm-hmm. And the main thing was, where was this built? It wasn't on top of the mountain, it was at the base of the mountain, which if you're trying to get to God, you know, it was at the top. No, the point was it was a portal. Right. And where they built this was now Caesarea Philippi, which is the temple of Zeus, the temple of Pan, the temple of Nemesis. We've been there, that's the gates of hell. That's where Jesus went at that area and said, upon this rock, that rock, I will build my church, meaning this mountain. Even though the enemy has used it from the very beginning, that's where he was transfigured. Right. That's where Peter called him the Son of God, the Messiah. You know, Jesus was showing that he was trumping the territory. Well, in Revelation 13, chapter 6 and 7, it says, the authority was given it over every tribe, people, nation to worship it. And that was kind of, that's what's going to happen here at the end, but that's what happened at the Tower of Babel. Mm-hmm. They were all one. They were all one thing. They had one accord, one religion, one
purpose. Mm-hmm. And they talked about the fact that so much of the occult started there. They can trace it back to beginning at that point in time, and astrology and all of the studies of the stars and all of that stuff.
And that's where the Magi came. I mean, all this stuff, it traces it all the way back there. So we have gone through all the ages, and everybody has been striving, man has been striving to get back to that one world government and one world religion. I don't think they have any idea why they're feeling so much. They think that by having one, that they can solve all the peace. Right. There's not going to be peace. No. They think by having one, that's going to solve all the world's problems. It's not going to solve the world's problems. But this goes all the way back in history to the Freemasons, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the two empires of the Illuminati, the Dark Organization, the New World Order, one new world system. Rockefellers, and now David, his son, had picked up that banner. Mm-hmm. And I mean, they won't even deny it. In fact, they boldly state that fact. And the interesting thing is, even in America, you may wonder, well, it goes all the way back in America. But one of the main key players of this world system that's been pushing under the radar is Henry Kissinger. Mm-hmm. From the very beginning, all the way up. You can see him in every picture of every world order group or people or meeting, anything.
Well, they're powerful and they are wealthy. I mean, it's true that those who have the money have the power. And that's what they're going to continue to push for, is to put everyone under the same umbrella for, like you said, a multitude of different reasons. Some of it I think there are generally people who think it will be better and that they can bring about peace and solve hunger and poverty and the climate difficulties and all of that kind of stuff. But then there's also the people that want it because they want more money and power. Mm-hmm. And
well, this actually started, it wasn't called the One World Order at that time. Mm-hmm. It started in 1921 with the title, The Council on Foreign Relations. That was the precursor. It was the biggest contributing factor to rule and establish. And then it was at that point in time that the Rothschilds came up with the Federal Reserve Bank. I'm pretty sure they're the ones that instigated and started the whole thing. That's how Rothschilds actually got his money. They were bankers, and the father decided that, you know what, I can make more money and have more power if instead of just making loans to people, we make loans to countries. I mean, that's a big deal. Bite. And then this whole Federal Reserve, which you need to do your history on this. It's neither governed by the federal government. There is no reserve.
Right.
There is no auditing. There is nothing. It's just a false sense of security. In 1913, it was very corrupt. There was no control and no say.
So then the League of Nations started after World War I and ended with World War II, but then the United Nations comes into play, and it just continues to morph, because they said we can't have another war like World War II. We can't do this again. So again, the United Nations is going to fix everything. And they
from
have
that, it has birthed
Agenda 2015 and Agenda 2030. They've said they want to end global poverty, which is, I mean, we're not saying that that's a bad thing, but we're just saying that this is probably not the group of people that's going to get it done, because they don't actually have that.
And you can't end poverty.
Not like that.
But it's all about sustainable development, and it's get everybody out of the suburbs and into apartments, get rid of cars, etc. And then we see that there was another big group that came on the scene, the Bilderbergs, and they meet to this actually very day. In 1968, then was birthed the Club of Rome, and it had a map of the whole world divided into 10 regions. Now, many thought that that was Revelation being fulfilled, but of course it wasn't. But it was a precursor.
Well, and we can't make it happen. Only God can say, now is the time.
And the whole point of this is for 5,000 years, they've been trying to get back to Babylon. And we had the Translateral Commission in 1973. It just keeps morphing into names and into encompassing more and more and more. Now, there's an interesting gentleman. A lot of people don't know about him. This was in 1976. I was only 5, so I don't remember him.
I wasn't a blip yet.
His name was Larry McDonald, and he was a representative from Missouri. And he actually discovered that there was a whole conspiracy, but it wasn't just a conspiracy, it was
fact.
Real. It was facts. He had dug up a bunch of dirt, and he was about ready to spill the beans on what the Rockefellers were doing at that time, trying to move it into this direction. And in 1983... his plane was literally shot out of the sky, and a lot of people died on that. And it was over our soil, not over foreign soil or over water. It just was shot out of the sky, and his widow had told the press that in 3 days he was going before Congress, and he was blowing this whole thing wide open.
The interesting thing is I don't like to think that those conspiracy theory kinds of things can happen. It seems daunting, it seems scary, but we're kind of beyond the point where we can close our eyes and bury our head in the sand.
And the problem is most everything that's been called a conspiracy theory is not.
No.
It's actual fact. They just say that because they don't want you to know. But right now we're not even hiding it. I mean, it's in plain sight. Mm-hmm. They were trying to push for the one world currency. I can remember in the 80s when I grew up, that was the thing. Even then, they were pushing for this one world order. And the EU, do you remember when they came in and they became 10 little mini nations within that governing group? And here's the Revelation thing again. And they had their own one world currency. The euro.
Yeah, the euro. Well, it's interesting because they were talking about the fact that they wanted one world currency and one person in charge of it all.
It was even David Rockefeller when he was asked point blank about this, if this was a conspiracy theory or whatever about this one world government. Well, it was in 1957 at NATO that Paul Henry Spaak said, "What we want is a man of sufficient stature of all people and to lift us out of the economic morass into which we are sinking. Send us such a man, and be he God or devil, we will receive him."
Lovely. Absolutely.
That was in Time magazine. That's pretty scary, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
They're saying right here, we want one man, a man with a plan, a man that's going to fix it all, and we don't care if it's God or Satan himself.
We'll take it as long as he can come in and fix this mess, or at least promise to.
We see, and then even now, we're kind of bopping back and forth in timeline here, but this is the whole thought process. So Emmanuel Macron was actually somebody who rose out of the ranks. And right here you have The Economist says, is this Europe's savior?
And they have a picture of him walking on the water.
Again, is he the Antichrist? I don't think so, but it's just the world is looking for someone to come and solve the problems. We talked about Agenda 2030. There was Agenda 2015, Agenda 21. I remember when that was big, and that was all to do with the schools, what they were going to implement, what they were going to do, and they did. And now Agenda 30, which is coming up pretty quick. What is that? The UN launches a new universal agenda for humanity.
So they want to end global poverty. They want universal health care. They want gender equality to solve all of humanity's problems so that they could bring about utopia.
That's just not going to happen.
It's not.
Because man's heart is evil and his desires are evil.
And it's not that, I think the majority of the masses that are behind things like this these are not bad things to be behind.
Right.
But it's recognizing that what they're telling you that they're doing and what they're actually doing are not the same thing.
Different things.
Yeah.
The Nine Nations. This was the summit, the Sustainable Development Summit of 2015 in September. It was all about how are we going to make everything sustainable. That Trilateral Commission that we talked about that was in 1973 was made up David Rockefeller and Zig Brinsky, and the cooperation between the North America and Western Europe and Japan. All these things kept morphing and getting us closer and closer to this one world government. We talked a lot about Henry Kissinger. What did he say?
He said the New World Order cannot happen without U.S. participation. Yes, there will be a New World Order, and it will force the U.S. to change its perceptions.
This is from he's pretty young in that picture.
Yes, he is.
He's been pushing, and he's in all the pictures with all the presidents throughout all the years. Well, in 1991, David Rockefeller said, the world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march towards world government.
So in 2003, this is what we were talking about. David Rockefeller says, some even believe we belong to a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family as internationalists and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that is the charge, I stand guilty and am proud of it.
So he goes through this whole thing. Some people believe, so he's making it sound like he's going to put the kibosh on all of it. But at the very end,
he says, yep, that's true, and I'm proud of it.
Yeah, for those of you who want to really dig into this, Jan Markell has some really awesome programs, PowerPoints with Olive Tree Ministries. There are so many people out there that have this on the one world government, but she really brings it down into layman's terms, and I want to thank her for some of these PowerPoints because it's just a little easier to use her than to reinvent the wheel, but they're not mine. But the amount of research that has gone on by so many men and women to come up with all this for you, and it's not just our ideas. This is people themselves. This is magazine headlines or covers. This is
newspaper articles, journal articles.
Yeah, at the State of the Union address in 1991, this concept knows no political sides.
No, it does not. It is not a liberal or conservative or Democrat or Republican or unitarian. It doesn't matter. Nope. It's all out there.
They have all been a part of this. And we're going to look that this goes, like I said, so far back. Roosevelt, I would argue, was one of the biggest one-worlders.
FDR was big.
And Carter was right in on that. And you have George Bush says, it is a big idea, a new world order. Only the United States has both the moral standing and the means to back it up.
So he wasn't saying it was a bad idea. He was saying we're the only ones that can make it happen.
He says we're the only ones with a moral standing?
Yeah.
A moral standing, and yet we're talking about a one world government that has to do with nothing good.
Right.
Revived Babylon.
It doesn't go well when everybody's under one rule like that.
To me, those two seem like they clash big time.
Yeah, absolutely.
He also said it would be like heaven on earth. He was one of the biggest promoters of the New World Order. Pope Francis actually is the vicar of vicars. He is the globalist. He calls for new global movement, and he has been the most vocal. And right here it says Pope Francis calls for a new global political authority to save humanity.
And it's sad that the head of the Roman Catholic Church is calling for a political movement to save humans. God's the only one that can do that.
Only Jesus could save. This also, headlines in a magazine.
Pope Francis calls for one world government, attacks border walls and national sovereignty, which that brings up one of the biggest ideas behind this one world government. Is any kind of nationalism or any kind of security on the borders or that kind of stuff. And if you look at the pushback that we've had in the United States against those two things, you know, anyone who's proud of being an American or puts that first or talks about defending our borders, right? Because if you protect your borders and you kind of look at your country as something you're proud of, then you're not supporting this idea of a one world system.
And that's really why they disliked Trump so much, because he went to the Paris climate thing and he said, I'm for Pittsburgh, not for Paris. He was talking about he's a nationalist, not a globalist.
Right.
And that was not on their agenda as far as playing ball. And so, we look at, it's really easy to get caught up in that and say, oh, it's the Democrats are the ones that are, or the liberal. No. This is so much bigger. This is on a global level.
Right.
This is so global.
And it really has far more to do with those that have the money than any political affiliation. This was an announcement on LifeSite News from Rome in May of 2019. Pope Francis made a strong new push for globalism on Thursday, calling for a supranational, legally constituted body to enforce United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and implement climate change policies. Speaking to members of the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences in the Vatican's Apostolic Palace, the Pope said, when a supranational common good is clearly identified, there is a need for a special, legally constituted authority capable of facilitating its implementation. That's a lot of big words.
It was.
But what he's saying is we need to have a group of people that's allowed to enforce this.
We're not just going to put this into place, but we're going to make sure it happens.
Yeah.
Time Magazine called him the vicar of the New World Order. Again, we're not bashing on the Pope. This has nothing to do with the denomination or that. This is headlines.
Right, these are headlines.
This is magazine covers. We're just bringing this to you. That it has been right in plain sight all along.
But I think that's just it. They used to be a bit more quiet about it. They are not quiet anymore. And this elusive they, I mean, it's out there. Globalist in chief.
George Soros. The main obstacle to sustainable and just world order is the United States. Soros' name is in the papers a lot, that he's the one behind a lot of this chaos and this overthrow. What most people don't realize is George Soros is actually Jewish. And he was detained and he was in the Holocaust. But it was during that time that he aided the Nazis against his very own people. And since then, he has hooked himself up with globalist billionaires all over the world. Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, all of these people that the world would be one.
Right.
And who else is part of that big foursome?
That would be Bill Gates.
And he has minced no words. I mean, he will be the first one to tell you exactly what he wants. He wants depopulation. He wants new borders. He wants one world. He wants...
no borders, open immigration, no matter where you want to go.
Even Mikhail Gorbachev said, the threat of environmental crisis will be the international disaster key that will unlock the New World Order.
And it was the 2015 Sustainable Climate that really kind of changed some of that and got a lot more people publicly on board, because it sounds really good. We should be involved in saving the world. God calls us to be good stewards of our environment. As Christians, we should support that.
They find terms, they find slogans, they find things that, well, no Christian should not be behind that. Social justice.
Right.
Who would not be behind social justice?
Right.
But what they've done is they've taken the term and what social justice used to mean, and they put a whole new meaning to these terms. Same way with climate change. We have always had climate change.
Right.
Now, is there maybe a little bit going on? I don't know. Are we supposed to be good stewards? Yes,
Absolutely.
definitely. But that's not the point. They're trying to find something that they can call a crisis that, not even God himself can do anything. Only man can
and
save himself.
Be unified together to solve these global problems.
It was Gorbachev who was the one who started the Green Cross group in the 90s. The environmental movement got its start right there. So that's what birthed
Environmentalism. Can a one world government protect our planet?
Yeah, and how far is that going to go? So in 2000, they came up with the Earth Charter, the Sacred Earth. It's a global government pushed by Marie Strong, Mikhail Gorbachev, and Stephen Rockefeller.
The interesting thing, though, is what they chose to put the Earth Charter in. I will put a picture of it up. They call it the Ark of Hope. And it looks quite similar to an Ark of the Covenant that we have seen.
The main difference, though...
There's no cherubim on top.
Yeah, exactly. There's no angels, because...
It's not really going to be protected by angels at this point.
No. To me, that's blasphemous.
I mean, the Ark of the Covenant is sacred and holy.
And Satan just loves to flaunt this stuff. We said he always parallels everything, doesn't he?
He absolutely does.
The United Nations even came out and said, they were the ones pushing this, that humans could cause the extinction of like 100 million species. See, now we're getting into humans are bad and environment is above humans. God created the environment for the humans. I find this interesting because one of the gentlemen that was on the Israel trip with us, he was having a conversation with his daughter. And I've seen this and heard this. And she got off on this whole thing. She was so passionate about that humans, and she said the very thing, humans are going to cause the extinction of over 100 million species. So what was the result? Well, we have to get rid of the humans. It has already shifted to that point. I said that was not new. I mean, I've been hearing this that have been pumped through the educational system.
Yeah, because his daughter is
years.
still in school. She's still in school. It's not like she's, in her 30s or something.
No, but this is not a new concept.
Right, but it's being pushed in our education systems. It's being pushed in what's available for kids to think less of humanity. Because then, when things like depopulation start being put in the forefront, not that they're not already trying to do it, we gotta save the earth.
And that has been one of Bill Gates's biggest platform is depopulation. And the Georgia Guidestones that we're going to look at maybe a little later, that is one of the key things on there was the depopulation, getting cleared down from so many billion to 500 million. You were talking about having a whole different view of human life. What about our technology? The games. What kind of games do the kids for the most part play? It's not Candy Crush.
No, they play a lot of games with violence. I mean, there's a lot of games where they're killing things and
Well,
survival.
So I took my husband to therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and this was in Omaha just the other day. And there was other people that were being seen for other stuff. And there was two girls, probably one was 8, the other one was 5, and there was a little boy, and he was like 2.5, maybe 3. And all he could talk about, I just killed this person, I just killed that person, I killed him, I killed her. He's 2.5 years old, and he's over there, and he's gay, and everything coming out of his mouth was killing this one and that one and something else. Yeah.
A lot of violence in the games at a very young age.
It's spooky,
Mm-hmm.
because then it just becomes second nature.
Mm-hmm.
And then that you wonder how that blurs when we see these people going out and doing massacres throughout.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about a little bit of that, of the satanic forces behind the different games
Mm-hmm.
and technology in general. And the one gentleman from Florida that went in and massacred a whole bunch of people, when they asked him, he said, well, he just heard the voices in his head. It was just like as though he was on a video game.
It's frightening.
It is.
And research has shown over and over and over again that it does have an impact on our brains. And it has an impact, especially when kids who are not yet at the point where they can distinguish between reality and fantasy or reality and fiction. If they can't tell the difference and they're putting all that into their brain, it's not good. It is changing the very way their brains develop.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then this becomes something that's so disturbing, and yet you didn't hear about it. In 2016, there was the Gotthard-based tunnel that was opened up, and they had a big ceremony for it. Now, I think I misspoke, because I knew about this ceremony, and maybe I didn't. I said it had happened during CERN. I think they had the same ceremony when they opened CERN, but that wasn't the only one.
Right.
And it's at about the same place,
Mm-hmm.
Switzerland and France. So this tunnel...
And Italy.
In Italy. Well, this tunnel, yeah, but the CERN is
yeah.
Switzerland and France. This tunnel links Switzerland, Italy, and France all together. This ceremony that they had this Baphomet, the man-goat creature that's always used for satanic worship. And it was a 9-hour celebration. It was definitely all ritualistic. The whole thing, we've talked about that it has to be
There has to be
component.
a spiritual worship component with this stuff. And people there, I mean, there were leaders from all over the world there celebrating. And they stayed and they at least watched or participated in this. That's frightening.
This tunnel goes under a mountain, and it's 35 miles. You wonder what is under that spot. We said the CERN was built in a specific space.
It was.
It was on top of the temple to Apollo. You wonder what is with this mountain.
Mm-hmm. There must be something.
Why would they go to the trouble of choreographing 9 hours of this grotesque celebration? For what? And none of it even remotely
Is
makes
about
sense
celebrating
on the human level.
Right, the linking of 3 countries and the travel, the transportation. Yeah, no, that's not.
This is all spiritual. So we talk about the dark forces that are really now emerging, and they're not even hidden. Mm-hmm. We're even seeing it on the clothing and the music side. I mean, so much more. But this has been back quite a while ago now. You know Celine Dion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love Celine. Do you remember what she made popular?
Why do you always ask me hard questions?
It's from the Titanic.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
My heart will go on.
Yeah. Incredible.
If I wherever you are.
That's true.
Yeah, I love that song. Love that song. Sang that song. Had no idea just how dark forces had worked behind her. She launched a new clothing line for infant and toddlers. This is not high schoolers. Infant and toddlers. In one of the Canadian news magazines, it said,
Celine Dion launches Illuminati-esque gender-neutral clothing line. It says new order on like the onesies, and then the little the little hats that babies will wear. And it has skulls all over it.
mm-hmm. We even have here a little girl who's got the all-seeing eye tattoo on the back of her hand. And her clothing line is called New. But this is on her actual website. If you go to it, the whole picture of it is nothing but different skulls. If you were launching a clothing line for babies.
I'm not sure why skulls are the image of choice.
That makes no sense whatsoever.
That's not what I look for when I go to shop for baby clothes.
Again, we're not judging anyone. We're just bringing this out. This is what's out there. This is what's going on because people don't even know.
Everywhere. It has infiltrated every aspect of our society. Every aspect. Nothing is sacred. Nothing is safe.
And if you look right now that was quite a while ago. Mm-hmm. If you were to go in the stores right now, what is the prominent thing on a lot of the clothing? It's skulls. Mm-hmm. There was a time there where all the crosses that were being made were upside down or sideways. Well, then we don't even know who was responsible. I don't. I guess I'd have to look it up. Who was responsible for the Georgia Guidestones? Did you get a chance to go see it?
No, huh?
Well, this was they erected this big concrete structure that was supposed to counter like the Ten Commandments. This was the Georgia Guidestone, and the objectives, it was one in population under 500 million. They want to return to one language.
Back to Babel.
It was a whole new Ten Commandments. The interesting thing with that is, it just all of a sudden miraculously came tumbling down one night.
God does stuff sometimes.
He does. In 2019, the World Government Summit formed under a particular arch.
The Arch of Baal, or Baal.
That was from the Temple of Baal.
Mm-hmm. And it's gone all around the world.
Oh yeah, and it's like 11 ton. It's not some little cardboard structure. It's huge. In fact, it showed up in New York when they were voting on the abortion back when, the first time, and then in the state, and then when it went to Washington, D.C., guess what showed up in Washington, D.C.?
The Ark of Baal.
At the exact same time. That's not coincidence.
No.
This temple, this arch, and we talked about that before. We showed pictures. It's in Berlin right now. But it was still there the whole time. We're talking thousands of years. And in 2015, there is a correlation. And so much information. I said, when information goes in, something's got to come out. I can't retain all of it. But to me, I thought there was something pivotal that had happened. Something had been voted in, or something with Trump. I could be wrong on the Trump thing, but it could be. Maybe that was the abortion thing. I don't know. But something was voted in, and ISIS destroyed the temple. You gotta live there, Ernie.
That is interesting.
They've been jumping on this whole new climate change deal. They tried to do something with COVID, but that actually didn't go too far. They did say, let no good crisis go to waste.
Right.
Who would say that? Only somebody who has an agenda.
Right. Not a good one. So in the Technocracy News and Trends, the little blurb says, fraud, Green New Deal plagiarized from 2009 UN Environment Program report. And a stunning revelation from a 2009 UN document titled Rethinking the Economic Recovery, a Global Green New Deal, which is interesting. Rethinking economic recovery. So that's why we're going to bring this Green New Deal up. It's discovered that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez Green New Deal is not a new movement of the people, but rather a crafty and plagiarized creation of a small group of global elite working through the United Nations. That sounds like a conspiracy theory.
It does. Russia says New World Order being formed.
The Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, declared today that the Western liberal model of society is dying and a new world order is taking its place.
And I had taken some notes on this too because I hadn't thought about that. This goes way back. Do you remember a certain song group called the Beatles?
I've heard it mentioned once or twice, yeah.
Well, John Lennon was a huge globalist. He was a huge one world government. In fact, he wrote a song that most people know the song, but they have no idea when they thought about it. It's called Imagine. He promoted it in 1971. A whole world generation signed on to it. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy for you. Try no hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine no countries. It isn't hard to do, nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I just think of somebody else who used the word dreamer a lot. But I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will live as one.
You know, what that reminds me of is the whole concept of you will own nothing and you will be happy.
See, what they don't realize is this one world government is actually now morphing into something else. And that's called the Great Reset. In fact, Biden has mentioned it multiple times. He did way back when he was running in 2020. But here's the thing, the actual picture, and I've been trying to find it again. I've seen the picture of the Great Reset. They broke reset into two. The Great, and they have raw and set. And what did I say about the new Egyptian
order? Because Ra and Set were both Egyptian gods.
Yes. And their whole motto is, you will own nothing
and you will be happy.
That's what this new Babylon is. When this new Babylon comes along, that first 3.5 years, there is chaos and somebody has to come in with a plan, a man with a plan, and try to bring it all together. And so all these nations are going to form into 10. And while there will be chaos, and they're going to bring this all into one religion, because how do you make one? He said there'll be no heaven, there'll be no hell, there'll be no religion, it'll all be well. He didn't ask me, I could have rhymed it better than he did.
Maybe you don't want to help him.
Yeah. But that's the point. That's what this is. How do you unify everybody? You have to break down all the barriers on all the walls. And we're not just talking physical, educational. Break down all the walls. Take key terms and change the meaning. Take laws, like they said, all of our laws right now, if you look at the title, it's the opposite of what it is. Mm-hmm. Everything is smokescreen. Almost everything is a lie. And I hate to sound doom and gloom, but it's like, you gotta pull your head out of the sand. We're not ostriches.
And they want us to not do our research, to listen to the lie line. It's not the party line anymore. It's not the towing the line. It's just this stream of unreality that they're feeding us.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that this is going to be too long, and so we're going to wrap this part up here real quick, and then we will catch the rest of it next time. So we thank you for tuning in. This is so powerful.
It is.
There is so much stuff here, and we have just barely
touched on the surface.
Yes, the tip of the iceberg. And again, there are so many places where you can go and see this. We don't want to bog you down too much. Just open your eyes if you haven't seen this. That you've heard about the deep state. Now it's the term, instead of the elite globalists, now it's called deep state. But they're all the same people, and this has been going on for a very long time. All the way back to Babylon.
It's true. they've been fighting to get back to it since it fell.
So we bring this to you because you can read the articles for yourself. Because once you know, you can't unknow. And whether you can grasp all this or not, you can't say, we didn't tell you. Shalom.